Well, good Wednesday morning to you. I'm at it again. Got a little different deal that I'm cooking in the cast iron. I'm using a different Dutch oven today. I've got a deer roast. Not just any particular deer roast. It's the neck from a young deer that I killed a couple of years ago. It's been in the freezer, and it's time to use it before we lost it. Use it or lose it applies to a lot of things, and meat in a freezer is one of them. So we've got this deer neck. Got it in a number 12 Lodge campfire Dutch oven, and we're going to get that going here. I'm going to resituate the camera, give you a look inside the pot before we put the coals on it and under it and get it cooking. There it is, the contents of that number 12 Lodge campfire Dutch oven. There's the neck from a small doe deer. I think she weighed 85 pounds or right there at it. I've got some potatoes around the roast and carrots, enough of each to create a balanced aspect. Now, as far as seasoning on a deer roast, I don't like to go too crazy with a lot of loud stuff because I'm not interested in destroying the game taste, the wild taste. I'm interested more in simply seasoning it to make it more palatable to our particular taste. And what you see there on top is a little squirt of yellow mustard, some ranch dressing, there's liquid smoke, Dale's seasoning, salt, and pepper. I don't use garlic on my deer meat because it's a clashing thing according to our taste buds. But I'm going to get the lid on this, I'm going to get the coals on it and get it going. Today's going to be another one of our typical South Alabama, Lower Alabama days. It's going to be hot. We've got a big chance of rain, and I'm getting started just a little earlier this morning, hoping to beat some of the weather and some of the heat of the day. I never was much of a horn hunter. I've always been more interested in putting meat on the table, and it does not offend me in the least to take out a few does. Now, this particular area that we're living in now appears to have a shortage of does, and I'm reluctant at this point to shoot any does right here around the cabin. I'd rather leave the does alone and let them multiply. We've got a lot of bucks and some really nice bucks, but these things, they're smart. My goodness, they're smart. They've been living around people for so long that they know the habits, and as soon as you walk into the woods in the fall of the year to start doing some kind of scouting, they're on to you, and they either head straight to the thickest of the thickets or they go completely nocturnal. And the likelihood of seeing them during the daytime, except during the rut, is slim to none, unless something has stirred them up in a bedding area and got them running. Stray dogs, people have these dogs that they let them free range, and it's a pretty big source of aggravation for me, for us, but nothing you can do about it. It's like contrary people anywhere. Can't do anything about them. People are just, I like that line in Lonesome Dove, Woodrow called, "I hate rudeness in a man. I won't tolerate it." Sometimes I'd like to take a branding iron and clobber some people, but the law won't let me do that. So what do? You put up with it. Find ways around it. That's one thing we like about living in these woods. We're able to have a little more control over what goes on in our immediate surroundings. And that's a beautiful thing. Remember what I told you on the other video about a third under and then the rest on top. With the number 12, because that neck roast is going to take, I'd really like for it to cook for about 3 hours. So instead of adding any extra, knowing that I'm going to have to do another burn to get some more coals going, to get 3 hours of cook time, I just did the 24. 12, double it, 24, 8 underneath, 16 on top. We're going to let that cook. We'll get back with you later. So these Dutch ovens come in several sizes. What size Dutch should you be interested in, or should you look at primarily as the first purchase in the cast iron department? Well, that's that question has three factors in order to adequately answer it. And the first factor has to do with weight, the weight factor. How much weight are you interested in hefting, or how much weight are you capable of hefting? There's a lot of difference in the weight between a number 10 and a number 12. Significant amount of weight. And that's the thing, one of the things that you need to take into consideration. The second thing is the mouth factor. How many mouths are you feeding? Now, for most things that I do in a campfire Dutch oven, I use the number 10. That for Shirley and I, for 2 mouths, is adequate. Depending on what I'm cooking. And most stuff that I cook, most meals that I prepare, the number 10 is more than adequate for that. Now, you've got the weight factor, you've got the mouth factor, you've got the leftover factor. One thing that where Shirley and I are regarding us, we're just not the best at doing leftovers. So if we cook up a whole lot of stuff, we'll, generally the next day we'll eat, if we don't eat it the next day, it sits in the refrigerator until it goes to the chickens. And so, there's the leftover factor. How good are you at using up your leftovers? And, those are 3 things to think about. The number 12, you can cook a pile of food in a number 12. That would feed 6 or 8 people, and maybe not fatten 6 or 8 people, but you could definitely feed 6 or 8 people from a meal cooked in a number 12. Whereas the number 10, it's ideal for 2, at the most 3, and so that's what you're looking at with the Dutch oven. It's just simply a matter of a lot of things that just depend on you as an individual, what your needs are. Call it grazing. Oh, these are good too. This is good grazing. Grazing on those wild blueberries reminded me of a comment that someone made a few days ago, where they said that they thought those berries were poisonous. Well, they're not. Not only are they not poisonous, they're very delicious, and they're also very good for you. Wild edibles 10 years ago, I knew very little about wild edibles. But in considering how to get along in the event that something dire befell us as a society, I started focusing on wild edibles, giving a lot of thought to it, because we're preppers. If you're not a prepper, you need to be a prepper. You need to be a sensible, practical prepper, because there's all kinds of things come up that challenges life. But in a long-term situation, we're going to exhaust everything that we have on the shelf, and then what then? Well, rather than waiting on the food train to start back up, we can simply go out into the wild and at least supplement what we have. And if we know how to hunt, we know how to fish, we know how to trap, we know how to forage wild edibles and wild medicinals, that goes a long way in getting us through. And the other side of that is it's not just about being able to survive in a bad situation. It's about educating ourselves. It's about acquiring hobbies that put something in, that hobbies that puts information up here in our head, useful stuff. And the thing about wild edibles in this environment, and in any environment for that matter, the wild edibles they're seasonal, and what you find growing in the summertime is not going to be there in the wintertime, not in the same form. And you need to be able to identify what a plant looks like in the winter as opposed to what it looks like in the summer. And you know, the resources are constantly changing in the wild edibles department, constantly seasonally changing. And I've always suggested to people that are unfamiliar with what we have in our environment here or wherever your environment is, start by learning 12. Start by learning to be able to identify and utilize 12 wild edibles in your particular environment. Learn 12, go from there. And 10 years ago, when I knew absolutely nothing about the wild edibles here in Lower Alabama, I have, over the course of time, been able to identify and utilize 60. That's 5 dozen wild edibles that we have growing here along the Gulf Coast. All right then, it's been 3 hours. Let's take the lid off this thing and see what it looks like. Get my handy dandy lid lifter here. See if I can do this without being entirely too shaky. You ready for this? I know it sure smells good. You gotta kind of balance it. You gotta find that perfect point so you don't dump ashes in there. Oh my goodness. How about that? That's that little neck and those potatoes and carrots. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this in and get that roast out of there, let it cool down where I can pick it like pulled pork, because there's a lot of fat and a lot of kind of gristly stuff in there and quite a few bones, but that is one tasty piece of meat. I hope you're enjoying these cast iron cooking videos. I'm having fun doing them, and I hope you're not only enjoying them, but I also hope that maybe you're learning, those of you who've never been, who've never cooked with cast iron, or cooked outdoors with cast iron, I should say. particularly outdoors. I'm enjoying doing these videos, and I look forward to bringing more. Right now, I'm taking that pot inside the cabin. And I'm going to get that little roast out of there and get ready to do something with it. I'll see you on the next one, folks.